Oh, we're live. It's Mannequin Chill.
You actually timed that perfectly,
I know I
sadly.
did. Look, I am good at this. This is Mannequin Chill. I am your co-host at Shane is the Worst. You can find me on Twitter at Shane is the Worst. If you have any questions for me, you can also tweet at me at Shane is the Worst. I'm joined by my co-host Scott Connor, who's at Charles Chill FFB. You can also find him on Dynasty and Chill, Chasing the Helmet, and Dynasty Trades in 5 YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, Dynasty Trades in 5. Get to see your lovely face every single day, almost every single day, and talking too much about just Dynasty trades. That leads right into what we were going to talk about. We were ranting about this.
Yeah,
Shouldn't we
so
be able to make Dynasty trades all the time, Shane?
yeah, because that's the point of Dynasty, right? There's no off season, there's no downtime. You're always building for the future. If I'm 2-10 right now, first of all, I haven't played enough games. So if I'm what week is this? 15? If I'm 2-12, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why? What's my impetus, or what's my reasoning for even paying attention, or even wanting to set a lineup, or even check in on that league at all if I can't make trades? Even if I'm the best owner in the world, like it's just my team's completely out of it. Um, really, the waiver wires are pretty barren in week 15 of a dynasty league. And even if I pick someone up, it's just someone the spot start. What's the point of picking them up if I can't trade them for value? So I just, again, I will never understand the need or the reasoning behind people creating trade deadlines in their office or in their leagues.
In their leagues.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, most leagues have some sort of trade deadline. And I think if you ask people why they prefer a trade deadline, there's been a ton of polls we saw. I mean, even Dynasty Trades in 5 did a poll to talk about one of our videos about trade deadlines, and it was like 75% of people said that their leagues had deadlines already and they were passed. So talking about trading this player away or buying this player for the home stretch didn't matter because they can't do it. But I think if we're in this era, we had a good debate actually on Chasing the Helmet the other night about this. If this is the new era of fantasy football, and it can be very annoying at times with the 3 week IR, teams seem to be a lot more liberal with how they use the IR. Like, hey, if I know a guy's going to be out for 2 weeks, let's just push him out for 3 weeks and put him on the IR. That's a lost fantasy game. But from a team's perspective, especially if we go to an 18 game season down the road, I think they're going to go into seasons assuming that a player is going to miss 1 or 2 games, maybe 3 games. And that's just going to be the standard. They're going to say, well, you've already played. I'm not going to say they're just going to purposely sit players out, but it's a longer season. It's a season that if you play 18 and then you go to the Super Bowl, you could play 22 NFL games, which is a ton. And I think teams are starting to treat this a little bit more like playing the long game. And for Dynasty, that can be a killer. If you miss a player for a game, it can be a playoff spot. It can be, the difference between you getting a buy and not getting a buy, or, winning the toilet bowl this week. If you're playing for a toilet bowl pick, like it can be a big deal if you don't have a certain player in a certain week more than it used to be. But I also think with the COVID impact now, with everything being week to week, things come out of nowhere. I mean, how many times, Shane, have you set your lineups on Friday, only have to change half of them on Sunday morning?
No less than 46 times this year.
Yeah, like every week we have a process. We've talked about this before, but you go in and it's like half of them you have to tweak again and double check and triple check and check again the fourth or fifth time on Saturday night or Sunday morning as you get news. What this leads me into though is, don't you think no trade deadline, the reason it's beneficial is because it allows everybody just to maneuver around the board, not even to like try to buy a championship or completely tank their way to the first pick. It's literally just the market should be active at this time because there's a lot more to do nowadays than there used to be. It seems like every week, even week 14, like I want to buy like a running back for a third rounder, or a backup quarterback. Like those should be something that you allow everybody to transact throughout the year. So I think that's the biggest thing. Everything is so week to week now. We should kind of think about keeping deadlines open up even through the playoffs.
I've just never ever heard a legitimate reason for a trade deadline. Like I've heard people like say, "Oh, it can ruin the league because one guy will sell players or he'll pay too much for players." All right, well, that's how you get parity in the league, though. If I want to win a title, I should be allowed to trade whatever I want to get to that title, right? As long as it helps the other owner. If the other owner can squeeze an extra first out of me because I'm trying to go for a title, well, that's good. If they're a bad team, that sometimes, it's not just rookie drafts that are going to help rebuild a team. If we're expecting bad teams to rebuild just through rookie drafts, that could take years. Some leagues they're not big on trading picks. I don't know of any of those leagues that I'm in, because every league I'm in, no one owns their own picks. But I know there's other leagues where people don't want to give up rookie picks. They cherish them. So the only time that you'd be able to make a move is right now. I've never heard a good reason for a trade deadline. I've heard, trade deadline spurs activity. I find that what spurs activity is the playoffs. In leagues with no trade deadlines, like we're trading right up to the championship. And I don't see anything wrong with that. And if I, excuse me, I don't like playoffs. Oh, wait, we have a comment from Eric Vanek. I don't like playoff teams trading for a guy during the actual playoffs. I've left leagues over that. Hell, me and Scott were co-owners on a team and left over that. Well, I'm going to disagree with you guys both, because, again, this is when you can maximize, when bad teams or teams that have lost can maximize the assets on their team. And if I want to sell my future to win a championship, knowing that it's probably going to hurt me for the next year or maybe even 2 years, I think I should be able to do that. We're all adults. Everybody, no one's being forced into these decisions, right? Like, no one's forcing me to trade 2 years ago 2 firsts for Julio Jones. Like, I know it's a bad move, but I knew that it would get me 30 points that week, and that's what I needed to win a title. So that's what I do.
Well, shout out real quick to Matthew Lum. His comment was no Manning cast, and Shane and Scott are here to save us. So thank you, Matthew. Appreciate that. Maybe one day Shane and I will reach that apex moment of being on something bigger than Mannequin Chill. But hey, shout out to DLF. They give us this platform. So love you guys.
No cursing on the Shane and Scott cast.
Then you can't curse on the Manning cast either, Shane. So if you ever want to get there, you definitely have to pipe it down a little bit. Yeah, but I wanted to throw this out there too, because I think there is definitely, if you don't agree with, and I know exactly what league Eric and I are talking about. This is a league Eric and I were in, Josh, back in 2016, I think. And it turns out that basically what happened was there was just a cluster of injuries that happened during playoff week, and it was essentially just an arms race between another team and us. And they made 2 big moves. I believe it was the year they lost. I think they lost Antonio Brown or Le'Veon Bell. I can't remember which one it was, but they went and just traded for the other one and basically overpaid. And this was when they were like the 2 best players in fantasy. And it put our feet to the fire. And even back then, I didn't have the same process that I had right now, but it put his and I feet to the fire to where, like, we had to basically gut our future to compete for this title. We were already in the championship game, right? And the other guy made a move. He gave up like 3 firsts to get like the best player in fantasy. So now we're looking at it like, okay, we have to make a move to match. Otherwise, we're going to lose the championship. So I think he kind of feels that it just got pulled. The rug got pulled out from under us. But we all knew that rule going in. It was in the bylaws. It was in there that you could trade. There's no trade deadline. So we knew it. We knew it up front. So I guess, you have to kind of be considerate of that when you join a league. Like, you have to know that up front and prepare for it. Don't think that just because you have the best team through 14 weeks that now you're the favorite. Because you could be the favorite, but then you have 1 or 2 injuries, and guess what? One of your competitors goes and trades for the players that would have replaced yours. And now all of a sudden they're the big favorite and you're the one that's struggling, and you may be forced to make a move. I mean, that's just the reality. And I get it. You should have done it before, all that kind of stuff. But let's think of a compromise, Shane. This is how I do it in my leagues. Okay?
I don't like it.
I know you don't like it, but it's better. Put it this way. It's better than cutting it off. A lot of trade deadlines are week 12, week 13, like a week or 2 before the playoffs even start. Okay. At least in my leagues, we've compromised. And a lot of these were never set up with trade deadlines to begin with, but they've been voted through to where, like, we've tried to compromise and give everybody the most amount of time. And essentially you can trade up until the playoff game. So the first playoff game in most leagues, it's week 15. You can trade up until that player kicks off in week 15. The one advantage to that, again, it's not what Shane likes, so I'll give you a chance to rebut in a second. The one advantage is unlike a lot of deadlines that have already passed that started maybe like Thursday or Friday, I had a lot of trade deadlines in leagues that were like Saturday or Friday. You know what I mean? Like I had to get the deal done this weekend. And who the hell knows what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks with COVID, right? So any move I made right now, I don't even know if that's going to help me going forward, but I had to do it now. The one advantage of this rule is after tonight, after the Monday night game, all those teams will know if they're in or out, right? So you had a bunch of teams. I mean, how many leagues are you in this year, Shane, where there's like 8 or 9 teams that went into this weekend and could make the playoffs?
Multiple.
Yeah, I mean, so like there were teams that were 7-6, but in 8th place, but they're not out of it. They're not going to sell off all their players, but then they miss out. Maybe they miss out on points or they lost this week and they're out of it. Guess what? Those teams still have 4 or 5 days to sell next week. And I think there can be a lot of deals that get done then because now you have more motivated sellers that actually entered the market. So in theory, you should have some activity that ramps up in the next 5 or 6 days in those leagues. Now, do those teams want to sell and help the team that just knocked them out the week before to win? I don't know. But I think in theory, that is at least a compromise to generate some activity. And it truly gives the teams in the playoffs a chance to buy for like a 1 to 2 week stretch. So I don't know if that's a good compromise. You said you don't like it. I mean, why should that even be extended? I'll give you a chance to rebut on that.
A couple things. One, congrats you on your FFPC because Cooper Kupp has about 4 receptions in the first quarter now. Matter of fact, he exactly has 4 for 31, so 7.1. So you've met that threshold. Good job. Look, if we're going to have to compromise, and I understand apparently some people do like to compromise in life for whatever reason, allowing trading up to the playoffs is a good compromise. Because anything before that is just silly. Because no, most of the 5-6 teams, 4, 5, 6 seeds, don't know if they're going to be in the playoffs or not until tomorrow morning. To be quite honest with you, and I think I was talking about this in one of our chats today. I'm going to wake up tomorrow and it's going to be like Christmas when I find out all the playoffs that I'm in. You know what I mean? Because there's all these ones where I'm like, well, I'm right on the edge and we'll see what happens because I'm not going to clock watch tonight. I'll check it tomorrow. So I do like that because that does also let the teams that finished it, will be the 106 now, the 106 pick or whatever. They can make some moves and they can sell players like Elijah Mitchell or James Conner, and they can recoup some value for guys that they think the value is going to drop over the offseason. Well, we know it's going to drop for James Conner, maybe not Elijah Mitchell, but now's probably when you can maximize it. To me, again, going back to, I don't understand why there's a deadline at all, because like you said, the rules. As long as it's fair for all teams, as long as all 14, 16, 12 teams are allowed to trade at all times, then it shouldn't matter if it's the finals. Because if me and you are in the final, you can, like you said, your feet were held to the fire when that other team made that move. You could have made that decision at that point, and you're making a decision, a long-term versus a short-term decision. You're going, okay, do I want to win the title? Yes. Do I want to win it bad enough that I'm going to hurt my future? Like, is it, that's what you're weighing. And it ultimately, dynasty football, in its simplest terms, comes down to that. Am I trying to win right now at all costs? Or am I looking with an eye to the future? Am I building to the future? It's one of the few times I should say that it's an either this or that argument, and I kind of like that. But again, if I'm forced, feet to the fire, if I have to compromise, yes. Week 1 of the playoffs, up until the game 1 of the playoffs, is when you should be able to trade till.
Yeah, and I think you could even extend that out, and you could say, okay, we're allowed to trade during the wild card round of the playoffs because the teams that have a bye, they don't have to win that week. So maybe it gives them a little bit of an extra advantage to sit back, maybe see who their opponents could be, see how the other teams are coming together.
Nope.
Okay.
Either or. It's got to be either or at that point. At that point, it's got to be.
So it's either all the way through the finals or it's before the playoffs even start. There's not like a cutoff halfway in between, is what you're saying.
Right.
Okay.
Job Web has a Job Web 1223. What's up? Thanks for checking in. He says the same reason the NFL has a trade deadline is why you shouldn't be able to trade during your playoffs. I guess, but it's not like, look, our game is based off the NFL, right? Obviously. But it's not like we take everything verbatim from the NFL. If we did, we wouldn't play in Superflex leagues. And anyone that plays in Superflex leagues absolutely loves them and would hate if we were forced to play, in leagues where we could just start one quarterback or where we were forced to start offensive linemen.
Well, here's the difference. I know I'm going to cut you off a little bit, but here's the difference. It's exactly what you were saying. The fantasy football, dynasty football is not the NFL. And the other thing, and I think this is the crux of it, and this is not something that we can address on a large scale or speak in generalities on this show because it's different from league to league. The NFL has 32 teams, 32 team owners, 32 front office general managers. They all have their own personal agenda. And built in, because it is a game for profit, right? I mean, yeah, teams want to win, but ultimately, we know inherently they are going to behave generally what's best for their franchise, right? So they're not going to necessarily be incentivized to do another team in the NFL any favors, right? So I think that's the difference is the NFL could get away with a trade deadline that it didn't end until week 15 or not at all. Do you really think that teams in the NFL are going to spoon feed deals to other teams in the playoffs? Maybe it would happen every once in a while, but it's not going to be like Dynasty, where I think the biggest fear of a lot of people that are against trade deadlines is what somebody posted up earlier. It was this comment right here from Shavini. Isn't it the reason usually cited? It's anti-collusion measure. And I think that's what people are scared of in these playoff trades, right? Is like a team colluding with another one to basically give them a championship. And can you defeat that in a $50, $100, $150 dynasty league? Maybe. But it's a lot harder to prove, and it's not really something that we're employed as commissioners or other league members to really deal with. So I think people just generally stay away from allowing flexibility. And that's one thing I try to, it's funny that I actually have the trade deadlines in my leagues because I'm very liberal when it comes to, I do not like any rules that tell me that I can't do something, Shane.
You're a libertarian. I don't like, you're a libertarian at heart.
Yeah, but I don't like rules that tell me, hey, you're not allowed to make a trade. You're not allowed to pick this guy up off waivers. You're not allowed to add or drop this player at this time. Like, you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do that. To me, if the system allows it and you can give me a justification, there should be no time during the year except for very specific times, maybe during the rookie draft, like there's no waivers or something like that. But other than that, leave it flexible. Don't have constraints built in artificially. That's what dumbs down activity in leagues, is having all these rules, like really, really strict IR rules or roster cut downs. Like, keep it flexible. Allow people to make moves that allow them to be able to make more decisions and have to make more decisions. It gives the people that are the most active and the people that are thinking the most, I think, the biggest advantage. So I think that would be my argument, is a trade deadline is just an artificial constraint that we create. That if you could tell me, Shane, there is never going to be an owner or a manager in my league that makes a deal that, the biggest fear is like, hey, someone makes a trade in the playoffs and then they just bolt after that, right? Maybe they didn't trade their picks, but then they just leave. And you don't know what happened behind the scenes. Maybe they told that person, hey, man, I'm leaving the league after this year. I'm done. Like, you want to buy some players, give me some picks. I'll just leave the orphan team with some picks, Like, that could happen, and there's no way for you to stop it. You've talked about this on HQ, though. You're in a lot of leagues where there's no trade deadlines. How many times have you seen a league destroyed by, like, in playoff trades? It's pretty low, isn't it?
Yeah.
You never.
So we'll go with 0. And look, and this isn't to be like, I'm cool, I play in a lot of leagues. We'll estimate I've probably played about 1,000 league years, about 1,000 years of fantasy football, based on the amount of fucking leagues that I'm in, the amount of leagues that I'm in. I've never seen a trade that's actually destroyed the league. I've never actually seen collusion based around a trade deadline. I've been in leagues where I've seen collusion, but that was a commissioner controlling 2 different teams, which is a whole other subject. But, and my whole point with collusion is collusion isn't a rule issue. It's a bad owner issue. And if I was going to commit collusion, I'm liable to do that in week 1 just as much as I'm liable to do it in week 17. I'm liable to do that in week 9 as much as I'm liable to do it in week 11, week 12, week 13, week 14. So I don't buy the anti-collusion what's the word I'm looking for? I don't buy the anti-collusion argument, only because I can commit collusion at any point, really. Me and you are co-hosts on several different podcasts, like 14 of them, and a YouTube show. We're also in, I don't know, 15 leagues together, probably something like that. If I was going to collude with someone, it'd probably be you. I could go to you and be like, well, not saying I would, but I would go to you and go be like, hey, Scott, so you're out of it. You want to make a sweetheart deal? That's never happened. If I was going to, you know what I mean? It's just in collusion. And that's not because like we're good people. It's because we're regular good fantasy football owners. If you have bad owners, they're going to do bad things.
Well, and I think that's a great example because, yeah, there's been many times where I've said, you know what, Shane, you're out of it, I'm not, or I'm out of it and you're not. Let's make the deal. But there's never, for the years and years we've known each other and the number of leagues we've played and the many of trades we've made, there's never, ever been a time where either of us have come to the other person and said like, hey man, I'll get you here and you can get me on the next one. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like we both approach it with, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what you're thinking. My process, your process. But that's you and me. That is the same way I would treat you. I would treat somebody in a league that I don't even know, and I'm going to be able to talk to you maybe differently or know what you're thinking or vice versa. But yeah, you're right. There is kind of an ethical boundary that you take when you get into these leagues, and you have to just assume that everyone else is doing it too. Otherwise, there could be collusion going on and you don't know about it. And I think that's why anytime there's any sort of collusion in a league, whether it's just the most simple thing, you have to address it then. And hopefully it doesn't ever get to a point where you're stuck with people in a league where they literally are colluding and ruining a playoffs or, a draft or something like that. I mean, I think that is a point where you do really want to take collusion seriously and weed anybody out. I mean, I've been somebody in the past. I'll be vocal when I see a commissioner that's abusing their power or an owner that's cheating in some way or something like that. Like I'll call them out in a public forum. I mean, yeah, you and I don't have like massive platforms, but we have big enough platforms that if we kind of out like a shady commish or a cheater out there, like people will know about it. You know what I mean? And I don't want them in any of my leagues. Like I'll tell people that I'm not even in the league on like, hey, this is a person you probably don't want to have take over your orphan. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Just because they did this or they did that. I mean, that stuff travels. So I think it's important to kind of keep a mental list of that kind of thing too when you see it and take it seriously and not just say, oh, that's my friend, I'll let it slide, that kind of thing as well. And as somebody posted a comment here, I think it's a great point. I think you'll agree with it. It was Jim Dickey. Shout out to Jim. People who say trade deadlines increase activity, he says it just does the opposite. It just shuts down the league activity. Have you noticed that too? Like the leagues where the deadline's passed, the chat's just silent. It's like, hey, I'll see you in January, see you in February.
Yeah, and to my point earlier, I'm 2-10, 2-11. I don't know how many games there are. Whatever. I'm in the bottom of the league. What's the point of me picking up waiver wire guys right now? Honestly, there's very few waiver wire guys right now that you're going to pick up that are going to turn into long-term answers. Most of the waiver wire guys you pick up now, spot starts, guys that are going to get a couple starts that you want to just trade for value right now.
You mean if the deadline's passed in those leagues, you're basically just don't even check those anymore, right?
Why would I even check the waiver wire? I mean, and honestly, that probably helps the better teams more than it helps anyone else, because then they're like, well, at least we have, I only have 4 people to compete with on the waiver instead of 12 people. I can't make a trade, so I'm done looking at, anyone else. And quite frankly, if I'm out of it and I can't make trades and I can't make moves and I can't leverage what's going on in the league for my own benefit, then I'm going to stop paying attention. I might stop into the chat once a month and just be like, hey guys, everyone's still alive? Yeah. Okay. Bye. See you next year. I found that the leagues where I do the most trading, or not me per se, but where the most trading takes place, are the most active leagues. I mean, it's just trading is probably the funnest part of Dynasty football, and it's the thing that spurs the most conversation, because everyone has an opinion on a trade that's made. So as soon as a trade's made, everyone's jumping in the comments to say that it's good, bad, and different, or you could have done better. which, some of it's annoying, but at least it's conversation.
Shout out to Tim. He said Monday Night Football broadcast picking up the Manning brothers slack. Appreciate that. Kyle Senra. Hey, Kyle. Shout out. Full Press Fantasy. Appreciate you. Yeah, I would say, Shane, there's a lot of leagues where I'm like right on the fringe of playoffs, and there's nothing better than being able to go Tuesday morning and being like, hey, and everyone knows I'm going to kind of stick to my dynasty principles anyway, right? Like, I'm not going to trade away James Conner for nothing, because even though I think his value is going to go down, I'm going to be a little stingy on who I trade him to. But hell, he's available in the next 3 or 4 days. If I'm out of it and there's no trade deadline, I'm motivated. I'm motivated to go find somebody, and I'm sure there's somebody in the playoffs that's motivated to add a couple players that they might be able to start or add to their depth. So I think it's that's definitely something you should think about, even if you have a deadline, to push it back and at least give some people some flexibility once the playoffs start. Everyone knows where they're at. They're either in, they're either out, but that really, I think, will generate some activity. And someone else mentioned, Tim mentioned this, casuals are the ones uncomfortable with trades during the playoffs. You think that's true? Like, when you get a lot of us, like, we're never going to, like you talked about before, we're not going to bend on our principles no matter what.
Yeah, and I will say this, look, and so we happen to be in a lot of leagues, and what happens with that is you end up being in a lot of leagues with a lot of other people that are in a lot of other leagues. You don't tend to be in many leagues where there's, and someone else brought up, like, a disparity of fantasy football knowledge. And again, just because we're in a lot of leagues doesn't mean that we're smarter than people, but it definitely feels like we play with the same types of people that kind of have seen it all, haven't seen many leagues fold because of this. And at least the experience is similar, the amount of experience, if not skill. Because just because I'm in a lot of leagues doesn't mean I'm particularly good. It just means that I have too much free time. But I at least have seen a lot. I like David Kingston's.
And you need an interior decorator, apparently, according to.
I know. I have pictures in my closet, but I am a single male, and I haven't gotten around to hanging them up. Look, I've only lived here for a year and a half. I'll get around to hanging things up. I like David Kingston's fancy having integrity comment. I mean, that's what it boils down to. Like, the people in your league, unfortunately, you know them well enough, right? But if people don't have integrity, it doesn't matter if there's a trade deadline. It doesn't matter. And none of that matters, because they're just going to, they're going to go to someone and go, hey, you want to win a title? Venmo me $50 and I'll make this deal with you, or whatever. And even if it's not cash in hand, whatever, it's just, hey, send me this and then send me a player next year. Collusion's one of those things that's just so hard to prove. And to me, again, it just feels like that's a bad owner issue more than it is a deadline issue.
Yeah, this comment was, things can look like collusion without it actually being collusion. So, I mean, and that comment, I think, definitely reigns true in a lot of leagues. And then there was another comment that basically said, this was Ja Webb again, there's a few people in leagues that just are bad, and they'll make bad trades, and it'll screw the league over, and it looks like somebody might be colluding with another, and, a trade could go down, and both sides had full integrity with the deal, right? They both thought they were getting a good deal, but it turns out it literally changed. It swayed who's going to win the championship. And we're in a lot of leagues. There are some people that are in leagues with us that are perpetually either inactive or make poor decisions, or both. But you know what? They pay their dues. They show up on draft time. They're active. I mean,
and if I'm going to make, and here's the thing. So if I'm going to make a bad trade, again, I'm going to make it no matter when. Draft well and collusion will never affect you, according to Andrew. I kind of like that concept, Andrew. Draft well and collusion will never affect you. Yeah, I mean, basically, if you build your roster, you're not really that concerned with what other people are doing. Now, if there's just mass collusion, that league's going to fold anyway.
Especially if there is any sort of shadiness or lack of direction from the commish. And I commish a lot of leagues. I've made mistakes in the past, but I try to always uphold a set of standards where it's like, I'm going to always act in it with integrity. So if I make a decision and I say it's for the best of the league, then people just kind of got to live with it and trust that I'm going to be doing everything with integrity going forward. Like, there has to be some trust that you put in whether it's the commish or whether there's like a couple people that run the league. Like those people have to always be on the lookout for this stuff because it can get out of control pretty quickly. At the same time, though, like, if you can find a league where you have a bunch of people like-minded individuals like us that are playing this game, in a lot of leagues, like with a portfolio, because we're really focused on like a process. I've never had a problem with this, honestly. Like I've had some bad apples, commissions, maybe some bad owners in leagues, but I've never really had a problem with a league where it's like people are actively trying to ruin it from within. You know what I mean? And maybe that's just the like-minded people that we play in a lot of our leagues with, but I don't know. Maybe it just seems like it's insulated at this point, but last thoughts?
No thoughts. Trade deadline's bad. I think I've proven my point. If anyone that disagrees with me, no, it's okay. Look, the most important thing, honestly, is that your league is in the league's in agreement with whatever the rule is. If you're the commish and 11 of the teams in that league don't want a trade deadline, well, then maybe, and you're a guy that loves or gal that likes trade deadlines, but the league is, opposed to them. Get rid of them, whatever the league agrees to. Just make sure there's a consensus in the league, basically, is the important thing. That, and don't do it too early. Like if you don't do week 4 trade deadlines, that's just ridiculous. So if you are going to do them, I guess I'll compromise up until the playoffs at least. Because, look, in the NFL, maybe a lot of the teams know they're out of it by week 10. Week 10, 80% of our leagues is still in the running for the playoffs a lot of the time. So, at least push them back a little bit because most leagues, we don't know who's going to be the final 6 seeds until the last 2 weeks of the season. So if you're going to do them, just push them back.
Yeah, and we could do a whole other episode on that. I know we only planned on going for about 30 minutes tonight, but we could do a whole other episode on how do you reward playoff spots? Especially with the 17 game schedule now, most playoff weeks are all the way through week 14 in most leagues, which means there's a completely imbalanced schedule. You're playing some teams twice, you're playing some teams once. Some leagues have double headers, some leagues do victory points, but most of my leagues have some form of an unbalanced schedule, right? So a lot of times, this is no joke. I've said this in our chat before. I have a team that is going to go 6-8, literally 6-8. It's going to finish in 8th place, and it has the best all-play record and the most points. I've never had that. I've had teams that are in the top 2 or 3 but miss the playoffs. But this is literally all-play and most points, the best team in the league, and it's going to lose 8 times. And I'm sure there's been games where I'm like, really? I score, 170 and the other team scores 180. And my 170 was the 3rd highest in the league. And I played the wrong team. But think about that too. It's pure head to head when you have an imbalanced schedule. It's not going to ever be perfect, but think about that too. I think that makes it a lot more interesting too, where maybe the last 2 spots go to most points or, something like that. So I know I'm rambling on with this. Maybe we can do another show on that later.
All right. So let's get John Webb's final comment in there. I like it.
Are you superstitious? I won 11 in a row and just lost this week. Did I get it out of the way for the playoffs?
Yes, you got it out of the way for the playoffs. Because
depends on why, though. Was it because you had a bunch of Dolphins and Colts and Eagles, or was it you have a bunch of injuries that are going to linger into the playoffs? What was the reason?
I'm taking this as he had a bad week with a lot of injuries and buys. 1 week injuries, and that he's probably got a bye if he won 11 in a row. So he's going to be all right in 2 weeks. You got it out of the way. Now you don't have to worry about being the whatever year Patriots that was that lost in the Super Bowl.
Yep. And just one more shout out to Dynasty Hot Sauce. If you're so concerned about Shane's background, don't they have any swag they can send you, Shane? Like a poster or something like that?
Maybe a Zach Wilson fathead.
I'm sure there's a couple extra of those laying around. Maybe he can be superstitious and send you an extra one. How about that?
There you go.
Cool. Well, that's it. We did 35 minutes on trade deadline discussion. We thought it would only go 5 to 10, and here we are 35 minutes in. So hopefully everybody enjoyed this Manic and Chill on Monday night. Maybe we'll do it again. Now that a lot of trade deadlines in our leagues are passed, we're not going to be doing much the next couple weeks, Shane, other than just kind of watching our playoff teams. So go ahead and close it out. Maybe we'll do this next Monday. That'd be 2 in a row.
2 in a row. Yeah, look, that's always the goal, right?
Yeah.
We're going to keep saying it until it happens.
Yep, and it'll never happen, but maybe it will. We'll see. Check in next week. That'll be December 20th, Christmas week. So whatever everybody celebrates, enjoy. If there isn't a Mannequin Chill, I hopefully there will be, but given our past, there may not be one before the holiday season. So for myself at Charles Chill FFB, Shane is at Shane is the worst. Check out DLF at DL Football on Twitter, YouTube, everywhere else you might consume any of their content. And then finally, hit the comment or subscribe button below. Catch you next time.